Hello students and welcome back to our class. In today's video, we will continue our discussion on communication process, types, and barriers. So for this video, since yung last video natin, we discussed communication process, in this video, magfo-focus tayo on part 2, which is we will try to differentiate formal versus informal communication. So, depende sa estado ng individual na involved sa communication or sa communication process at kung gaano ka-urgent or urgency of the message na kailangang ipadala or kailangang ipaalam or information na kailangang i-relay. Communication channels can be categorized into two. It can be formal or informal. Simulan natin with informal. Kasi medyo mas mahaba yung discussion natin with formal communication. So, informal muna tayo. Sa informal communication, it's the casual and unofficial form of communication. Paano natin nasabing unofficial? Ibig sabihin, parang nagchichika lang tayo. Not necessarily laging chikahin, pero nag-uusap tayo spontaneously. Walang official rules na dapat habang nagsasalita ako, hindi ka muna iimik. Walang mga ganong rules. O kaya, you need to raise your hands if you have questions. Yung mga ganon, mahanap natin sa formal communication. Wala ring process. Wala ka ring, program. Okay, ito dapat muna yung topic natin, tapos ito yung susunod, tapos si ganito yung magsasalita. Walang system. Wala ring formalities. So, you can talk freely. And lastly, wala ring chain of command. In an informal communication, walang boss. Walang mas mataas ang posisyon. It's very informal. Next, we have formal communication. Ano naman yung formal communication? The exchange of official information that flows along the different levels of the organizational hierarchy and conforms prescribed professional rules, policy, standards, process, and regulations of the organization. So, kabaliktaran naman siya ng informal communication. Kasi dito sa formal communication, meron ka na ang process. May policy ka na. May sinusundan ka na. Okay? Yun yung pinagkaiba nung dalawa. So, there are 4 different forms of formal information. Yung una is what we call downward information or downward communication. Next, we have, syempre, kung meron kang downward, meron ka ring upward. Then you have horizontal or lateral communication. And lastly, you have diagonal or crosswise communication. Parang papel lang, no? Crosswise. Simulan syempre natin with downward communication. Anong meron sa downward communication? Dito, yung impormasyon or yung information ay ipinapasa from management level to subordinate level. It's the most common form of formal communication kung saan pababa yung information. Mula sa higher level to lower level ng employees. So, dito, merong boss. Merong mas mataas, management level to subordinate level. Ano ba yung laman ng downward communication? So, usually, ang laman ng downward communication ay orders and instruction. Hindi orders sa karinderya, okay? Orders, ano yung dapat mong gawin? Ano yung mga responsibilities mo? Or ano yung expected sa'yo? At paano mo siya dapat gawin? Dapat makapag-submit ka ng report ng ganitong oras sa ganitong araw. So, may instructions. Pwede siyang written or oral, depende kung gaano ka-urgent yung message, at depende rin sa kung sino yung involved sa communication process. Ano yung mga examples of downward communication? Reports, emails, letters, manuals, etc. Ito yung mga common communication tools under downward communication. Ano yung nilagay kong example dito? So, meron ditong memo from Sony Pictures about cancellation of Take Your Kid to Work Day. Okay? So, basically, ini-inform mo or meron kang instruction na, oh, itong activity na to, hindi natutuloy. Yun yung downward. Nanggagaling from higher position to lower position. Next, we have upward communication. Dito naman, yung communication, upward. So, kabaliktaran siya ng downward. Yung nagsusulat or yung sender natin is from lower position. Sa company, usually. Okay? So, halimbawa, employee to boss or to manager. Okay? The message passes from subordinate level to the management level. Ano yung usually counted or kasama under upward communication? Mga form of requests, reports, suggestion, complaints, yun yung mga under upward communication. I remember way back September last year, I wrote a letter to a higher position. Kasi meron akong report na may i-report na incident, basically. So that's an example of upward communication. From an employee to someone in the higher level or management level. Ngayon, mas mag-dwell pa tayo on the differences of upward and downward communication. In terms of definition, sabi ko nga, sa downward, from higher, from management level, to subordinate. Doon naman sa upward, from subordinate to superior. In terms of nature, yung laman ng downward communication are usually instructions, orders. So, medyo directive in nature. Parang inuutusan ka. Okay? Kasi ito yung manager level eh. They have a say. On the other hand, yung upward communication, non-directive siya. Hindi siya nag-uutos. Mostly suggestions. Pwede rin yung complaints. Ini-inform mo sila na ito yung nangyari. Tapos magsasuggest ka na dapat ganito. Or you report incidents. Yun yung part ng upward communication. Next, in terms of application. Yung downward communication is more suitable or mas madalas nahanap natin sa authoritarian environment. Kasi nga, directive siya, nag-uutos ka. On the other hand, yung upward communication is commonly found on democratic environment. Just imagine this. Tingin nyo ba makakapagsulat kay Hitler yung mga subordinates na Sir, tingin ko mali yung ginagawa mo. Dapat ganito na lang po. It doesn't work that way. Kasi nga, pag authoritarian, nag-uutos ka. So, yung usually ginagamit doon is the downward communication. In terms of purpose, ang purpose ng downward communication is to inform or supply yung employees with relevant information. On the other hand, yung upward communication, ang purpose niya is usually feedback. Ini-inform ng subordinate yung higher ups na ay ganito po yung nangyari. Ay baka po hindi effective. Baka better na ito po yung gawin natin. Sabihin natin, for example, ay nag-aalisan po yung mga turista. Umalis sila dun sa hotel. Bakit kaya? Baka po sir, pwedeng ganito yung gawin natin. So, magkaiba sila ng purpose. Distortion. So, downward communication, people find little scope to distort the message. Kasi nga, instruction siya. Kailangan mo siyang i-follow. So, walang room for distortion ng message. On the other hand, upward communication can be distorted intentionally as subordinates have expectations to be fulfilled, such as job promotion. Frequency. Gaano kadalas? Gaano kadalas? It takes place several times to give orders, advice, and directions to a subordinate. So, in downward communication, madalas kasi talaga siya. Kasi kailangan mong inform ano yung gagawin, kailan mo dapat, kailan kailangan. Okay, in terms of upward communication naman, hindi siya ganun kadalas. In terms of initiative, sa downward communication, yung mataas ang posisyon or yung mas mataas ang posisyon, sila yung nag-i-initiate ng communication. Sa upward communication naman, yung lower level employees ang nag-i-initiate to establish communication. In terms of management, instruction type of management, yung downward, and consultative naman, yung management style ng upward. Bakit? Kasi nga, nag-uutos ka under downward communication. At kung tinatanggap mo naman yung upward communication, ibig sabihin, you are willing to accept suggestions and you are willing na or nagko-consult ka dun sa employees mo. So, in terms of formal communication, yung most common natin is upward and downward communication. Pero aside from that, meron pa tayong two types of formal communication. Yung una dito is the horizontal or lateral communication. Ano yung meron? Ito yung communication kung saan yung same level from different department ay nagkakaroon ng communication between managers, for example, of different departments. So, ibig sabihin, magka-level lang kayo. Pareho kayo halimbawa na managers or pareho kayo na head. O kaya pareho kayo ng department, tapos pareho kayo ng level. Kaya horizontal. Ano yung halimbawa, for example, meron tayo ng finance head, tsaka HR head, or accounting head, at tsaka production head. So, pareho kayo ng position in the company, that's why it's called horizontal or lateral. Another example, sabihin na natin sa hospitality industry, would be the head of housekeeping talking or providing a letter or a request or information to the security department head. Okay? So, yun yung lateral. Ibig sabihin, you are of the same level or position. Yung last natin is what we call diagonal or crosswise communication. So, ito yung example nito is when or yung meaning nito is when the employees of different departments at different levels communicate with each other irrespective of chain of command. So, ibig sabihin, magkaiba kayo ng department at magkaiba kayo ng level. One example would be communication between floor manager and sales team. Diagonal yon. Kasi from manager to a team. Ano pang example sa hospitality industry naman? Halimbawa, yung member of the security department would communicate with the head of concierge, for example, or head of the kitchen. So, magkaiba ng level, pero magkaiba rin ng department. So, under formal communication, meron tayong apat. The downward, kung saan from higher level to subordinate. Yung kabaliktaran nun, we have upward. So, from subordinate level to higher management. And then, we have horizontal or lateral, meaning pareho kayo ng position or level. And lastly, meron tayong diagonal or crosswise kung saan magkaiba kayo ng department magkaiba rin kayo ng position or level in the company. In our next video, we will talk about different types of communication naman. Dito, we will talk about verbal, non-verbal, and written communication. That's the end of our discussion. If you have questions, you can send me an email at arceliaslarateresa@gmail.com. You may also send me a private message at Facebook, or you can comment down below. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening. Bye, class!